And welcome back. So in the last video we went over a little kind of showing our results of cleaning our driver's side cylinder head there, and kind of looked at the before the passenger. So we just been allowing the passenger cylinder head to continuously soak here, as I've been working, haven't had time to get back to cleaning this one off. But what we're going to do now is, again, we're going to take the same Scotch-Brite very fine, soak it in a little bit of this residual WD-40 that's just been kind of pooling up here at the bottom, and just kind of use that to basically take like this and just lightly go over these cylinder heads, just using it to break up the glue and the carbon. And you can kind of see, like, if I pick this piece right here and just kind of, there we go. Cylinder head's going to rock on me a little bit, but you can see just kind of soaking that stuff once again, and a little bit of pressure does a pretty good job of starting to remove all this old sealant and stuff from the head gasket. So I'm going to continue to work on that. We're going to, again, scrub this down a little bit. Once we get on to the second stage of this, which is getting this cylinder head outside and then coating it down with a little bit of solvent, and then I'll get a fresh one of these, and we'll continue to process from there. But again, figured I'd show this to you and kind of show you the steps that at least we're using here to get these cleaned up. But I'll bring you back in a bit. Thank you much. And welcome back. So we've got our cylinder head in our step 2 tub here. As we spoke about before, we just kind of lightly scrubbed this down while it was covered with WD-40, just to break up the bigger chunks. And you can see that there's, sealant still remains in some of these places. Plenty of places here, still plenty of dirty, but we got the bigger stuff off. And now what we're going to do inside of just our little tub here, we've got another can of True Fuel that I've told you about before. So this is, normal 4-cycle fuel, usually used in lawnmowers, weed eaters, things of that nature. Since it is gasoline, since it is a solvent, and not to mention these cylinder heads are used to being exposed to gasoline, it's a pretty safe solvent, at least in my opinion, to use for this process. And then we've got a couple cans of brake clean that we'll use to flush down the cylinder head once we're all done, so that we can get rid of any possible leavings or residues as this Scotch-Brite pad kind of wears down and leaves some grit behind. That's what we'll use the brake clean to get off. Now, there are obviously easier ways of doing this, more efficient ways of doing this. If you've got a parts washer, by all means use it. You can potentially use mineral spirits as well. Most part washers use mineral spirits. Use mineral spirits to clean all this up. And also, if you've got access to, an industrial cleaner like you would in a machine shop, where you can put this entire thing in basically a big old parts washer, then more power to you. But this seems to work good for what we need it to work for. And you can kind of see the bottom of the tub from when we did the driver's side cylinder head. Once all this solvent evaporates, you can see a nice little just pile of dirt and all the other debris that got washed off these heads. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to get this head soaked down in this, start scrubbing it down with our Scotch-Brite, and then once we're ready, we'll clean everything up with some good old brake parts cleaner, and then we'll bring you back. Thank you much. And welcome back. And yes, I am doing this outside in a well-ventilated area, which I forgot to mention before the beginning of the video. But you can see our cylinder head here. You can see the amount of dirt and crud that has accumulated in the bottom of our wash box. And just going through now and just getting a little bit of the built-up carbon out of the combustion areas, making sure the ring seats and everything are nice and clean. And again, we're going to lap new valves into these, which will pretty much take care of the rest of it, but I want to get the majority of the chunky stuff off. And you can see that's what you end up with. It's just a lot of dirt on these cylinder heads. It wasn't just carbon, it was a lot of actual sand and other particulates. So what we're going to do now You can see we've kind of got everything wiped down and everything's loose on the cylinder head as far as the dirt. We're just going to follow it up, like I said earlier, with a couple cans of brake clean. We're going to get this thing hosed down, get it all cleaned up, let it dry real good, and we'll kind of give everything a final inspection. And then we'll go from there. But I'm going to get this, start getting this sprayed down, and I'll bring you back. Thank you much. Okay, thought you might like to see some of this, but you can see as we're spraying our cylinder head down, a lot of the varnish, you know, yellow colored stuff is dissolving. It's just, you know, carbon buildup and old gasoline and all kinds of other impurities. So it does a really good job of removing all the grit and kind of showing you what's left. So we got a little bit of scrubbing to do. Some of this, just like on the other cylinder head, is just pitted just due to electrolysis, so you're not going to necessarily get that 100% clean. Like I said, the only real way to get rid of that would be to take them to a machine shop and have it take a thousands or so off the face of the head. But you know, this kind of stuff, this little pitting around the water jackets is perfectly normal and fine from my understanding. I'll put a link in the description below of Reignited's project, and you can see in some of his videos he makes a comment about this exact same thing, about these pitting around this water jackets. And he'll also have some videos in there where how he resurfaces his cylinder head, because the Scotch-Brite will leave some very minor scuffing in it, but it's perfectly normal. It's fine. The head gasket will still seal, because if you see how he does his, which is, you know, the way Mopar actually says that you can redo these in the field and put them back on a vehicle, is that he's got a very light roll-out disc, and he goes over the front of it, keeping light pressure, and what he ends up with is a lightly scuffed surface all the way across, which you'll hear him comment on is still perfectly fine. It'll still seal up okay. So having these little minor light scratches in here that you can't even catch with your fingernail is actually, like I said, perfectly fine. So that's kind of the process of it. I'll continue to kind of douse this down and make sure I get, you know, out of these, make sure I squirt down the intakes and the exhaust and all that, make sure I get as much as this old garbage and debris out of here as we can, and then I'll bring you back. Thank you much. And welcome back. Well, after a copious amount of brake clean, other solvents, bunch of shop towels, a couple of red Scotch-Brite pads, and one thoroughly abused Tupperware tub. You can see the remnants of the old solvent and all the debris and sand and carbon and everything else we scraped off those heads. And we got a pretty decent looking cylinder head. Is it perfect? No, it's not. It could really use some time soaking in a parts tub or inside of an industrial cleaner. But you can see we did get the majority of the outside built on, crammed up sand and oil and everything else that's accumulated on these poor heads since 2009. And of course, that's our mating surface that you saw there. Got a little bit of condensation on here. It is high humidity because it's raining outside, and spraying everything down with parts cleaner, you know, it causes it to evaporate so fast it actually cools the aluminum down and causes it to condensate. So you can see that we got our sealing surface nice and clean at this point. All the old chunks, all the old sealant. The only thing pretty much left behind is what we were talking about, just like on the other cylinder head. You got some electrolysis pitting around the water jackets and around some other spots of the head. But like, for instance, you see a little bit of pitting right there. It doesn't go all the way through, and you know, some of the dirt did settle down into those pits, and because of that, I'm not going to be able to scrub that out without causing a divot in the head, and that would affect the sealing surface. But again, I'll link those videos in the description where you'll see Reignited resurface his heads, and when he gets done, everything has a nice kind of light scuffed finish to it, and per Chrysler, that's perfectly fine. So what I'm going to do next is I'm just going to get an oiling can and drip a little oil down each one of these valve seal guides, since they've been exposed to a lot of sealant, and I believe that is the steel sleeve that rides in, if I remember correctly, and I just want those protected a little bit so they don't start to form any type of corrosion. I've kind of did the same thing over here when we cleaned it off, and you can see that there. So with that being said, I'm gonna cut the video at this point, get my mess out there cleaned up, and then we'll bring you back when the next thing we're gonna have to do to this head is that I did get the easy outs in and some bits and a center punch. We're gonna work on getting that snapped off bolt that you see there out of this cylinder head. So that'll be the next thing I bring you back for, is working on that. Once we get that complete, then we'll lap these valves and start to reassemble these heads and get them ready to put back on the motor. But with that being said, I'll bring you back when we're getting ready to do that piece there. Talk to you later. Bye.